Hope everyone is safe. Without having a self-study guide for GATE Biomedical Engineering exam, would help hundreds of students. So I am making this video. Specifically in this video, we'll look at accessible books, videos, and other resources that are useful for GATE Biomedical Engineering preparation. We have already talked about books that are useful for GATE, but in this video, not just the book names, but we'll go deep into the chapters and look at chapter-wise worked out examples that are very useful for GATE preparation. And I also have a bonus GATE preparation strategy towards the end of this video. With that, let's get started. You should get started with general aptitude and engineering mathematics. General aptitude because first thing is many of the aptitude skills are very useful specifically for self-study. So you want to be able to understand the paragraph that you read, understand a worked out example from a book. Because of that, basic aptitude is very, very important. So you get started with general aptitude. And, similarly, engineering mathematics is the foundations for pretty much most of the numericals in GATE Biomedical Engineering. So again, it's a good idea to get started with engineering mathematics. If you look at general aptitude, there are many books available, but my suggestion is to look at YouTube videos and the playlist that we have curated. First thing is to understand the type of aptitude questions and also the pattern of aptitude questions. Roughly, there are 4 types of aptitude questions. We have verbal, quantitative, analytical, and spatial. I'll solve sufficient problems from each of these aptitude types until I start recognizing the aptitude question that is being given to me. So recognizing the aptitude type is the first step. And with sufficient practice, you also start solving them in a matter of a minute or two. And if you just look at previous year question papers, you will roughly get 8 out of 15 marks in aptitude. So that doesn't suffice. You also need to practice. If you look at 10 to 15 years of aptitude questions, you will easily score somewhere around 11 out of 15. Once you really start getting a grasp of it, you can easily score 15 out of 15 in aptitude. It's hard, but not impossible. So Greywall is a standard reference for engineering mathematics. You could also look at Kreisig, advanced engineering mathematics. But again, most videos and playlists in YouTube are very useful for engineering math preparation. Go topic-wise and start solving previous year question papers. If you do previous year questions, you will roughly get 60% of marks in engineering math. That is like 6 to 7 out of 13 marks in engineering mathematics. With reasonable practice, you can score close to 9 marks. Scoring 12 or 12 plus in engineering mathematics is hard, but not impossible. If you really understand the concepts and underlying theory, you can easily score at least 10 plus in engineering mathematics. Notice with just aptitude and engineering mathematics, it's possible to get 20 out of 100 in the GATE Biomedical paper. So these are the first 2 subjects to get started with, and this should help you get very close to the cutoff. Previous year question papers and YouTube playlists and videos are my suggested references for these 2 topics. Okay. Once you finish general aptitude in mathematics, the next thing you should be doing is to look at the General Biomedical Engineering book by Enderle and Bronzino. The reason is, this book is very vast and very broad, covers most of the topics in the GATE Biomedical syllabus with lots of examples. And what I have given here is a chapter-wise list of examples that are very useful for GATE. For example, if you look at the 3rd chapter on anatomy and physiology, examples 3.1, 3.2, so on till 3.10 are very relevant for GATE. So again, if you look at the 4th chapter on biomechanics, examples 4.1, 4.2, 4.5, 4.6, till 4.14 are useful for GATE. Listing the examples in the first step books in this way, I thought would be very, very useful for self-study. And what I have done is to not just list the examples that are useful from this particular book, but I have also listed down examples from pretty much all the suggested references. Okay. Once you get a feel for all the topics in the GATE Biomedical Engineering syllabus, the next thing you should do is to read medical imaging from websites. What we have learned is that the weightage given to different subjects in the syllabus is a variable. From year to year, it changes. One year control system has very less weightage, but another year control system has a lot of weightage. Given this, it's a good idea to give equal weightage to all the subjects and skip only very advanced topics in any subject, or skip one or two subjects that you feel very uncomfortable with. But other than that, you should be trying to cover pretty much the entire syllabus, at least certainly the basics of all the subjects. Even given this variability in the weightage of the subjects, medical imaging has had a significant weightage in the entire paper, close to 10 marks out of 100. So knowing medical imaging very well can easily help you clear the cutoff. Along with engineering mathematics and aptitude, you can easily score 25 plus out of 100 in the GATE biomedical paper. Another nice thing is the questions and the syllabus for medical imaging are specifically very well clear. For example, most of the questions in GATE biomedical paper are directly modified examples from Pins and Lens. Even this has been the case for instrumentation papers. Now, GATE biomedical questions are being set from Pins and Lens. So, as soon as you finish Enderle and Bronzino, finish medical imaging. For each of the chapters, starting with chapter 3, the corresponding examples are listed down here. So, first thing is finish this book. In addition to that, there are also some medical imaging problems and examples in Enderle and Bronzino. I suggest you take a look at that. So once you finish medical imaging, you should start preparing the subjects you find most comfortable with. For bioinstrumentation, Webster is good enough. In addition to Webster, there are also some interesting problems in Enderle and Bronzino as well as Carr and Carr. Bioinstrumentation by Webster covers pretty much most of the topics in the syllabus. Again, Webster is one book that is being used to set actual gate questions. Interestingly, this is one subject where going by one book may not suffice. So again, look at more examples in Enderle and Bronzino, and there are also many more examples in Carr and Carr. Carr and Carr examples are specifically very, very easy. Pretty much almost all the examples in the book are useful for gate. So again, skim through this example. In addition to that, we have lots of previous year question papers from Bioinstrumentation book, and I have given links for a couple of collections of those questions in the descriptions. Interestingly, for this bioinstrumentation, more concise theory as well as many examples could be found in virtual lab. These are linked again in the descriptions below. And next is anatomy and physiology. High school biology, specifically zoology, should help cover most of anatomy and physiology that's required for GATE biomedical. If you want practice questions, we have a nice MCQ book by Carr. Okay. This book is very, very useful. If you go through the book once, I think that should suffice for GATE biomedical preparation. If you want more questions, more harder questions, there is also a book by Mano. It's slightly harder, but if you finish Carr, I suggest you go to Mano. So for biomechanics, you will need multiple sources, primarily Asgay or Norrin for basic strength of materials and engineering mechanics. And then for fluid mechanics part, I suggest you look at Lee weighting. And then for kinematics and gate analysis, you will have to look at additional references. I have provided web-based resources in the descriptions. First thing is, look at the biomechanics chapter in Bronzino, take a look at all the examples. Then for strength of materials or engineering mechanics aspect of biomechanics, take a look at SKI model. Specifically, chapters 3, 4, 5, 13, and 14 are very useful. But even chapter 15 is useful to some extent. The examples that are useful are listed here. For fluid mechanics, you need a different book. The book by Lee Weighte is very, very useful. The examples that are relevant for K are listed here. In addition to that, there are some concepts of intersection between biomechanics and biomaterials. And these are so important that questions from this concept shows up again and again. And importantly, specifically take a look at 9th chapter on biological materials. In addition to these topics, there are also gate analysis and kinematics of joints that are there in the syllabus. I have provided web links where these subjects are very helpful. For biomaterials, Park and Lakes has sufficient number of examples and workout problems. I suggest you take a look at them. In addition to that, there are also a couple of chapters in Enderle and Bronzino. Material characterization techniques and laser are not covered in either books. I suggest you look at analytical, optical, and biomedical instrumentation part in the GATE instrumentation engineering paper. The chapters that are there in the syllabus are listed along with examples from each of those chapters. This is one reference where doing the exercises in addition to the worked out example problems would be specifically useful. So those exercise problems are also noted down along with examples. One thing to note, there are a couple of more examples in Enderle and Bronzino. And interestingly, both Enderle and Bronzino and partner index do not cover certain topics in the syllabus. For example, material characterization is not covered in either of these books, but there are gate PYQs available for those topics. Now let's look at some of the core non-biomedical subjects. A good book for electrical circuits is Alexander Sadiku. The nice thing about this book is that there are well illustrated examples throughout the book, so you don't have to go anywhere else for theory as well as for practice. Pretty much most of the chapters in this book are very useful. And, the book has very basic examples, then built on top of each other towards more advanced examples and application-oriented examples. To get a good grip of electrical circuits, my suggestion is to look at pretty much all the examples in this Alexander circuit book. Examples that are there towards the end of the chapter, examples that are based on applications concerning theory in each of the chapters. These application-oriented examples are specifically very relevant for Q. So once you cover the basics, make sure you are able to solve at least the application-oriented examples that are near the end of each chapter in this book. And some chapters in Alexander Circuit are also useful for analog electronics as well as signals and systems. Because the standard signals and systems reference is so hard, I have given the chapters in Alexander Circuit that are very useful for signals and system topics. Again, these chapters has very well illustrated examples and comprehensive theory. So these would serve as one-stop solution for at least these topics in signals and systems. In addition to this, if you want a list of formulae that are very useful for GATE, these are given in the appendices at the end of this book. Specifically, Appendix C with mathematical formulae are very useful for GATE preparation. Signals and systems, Oppenheim Willsky is a standard reference, but this is a slightly advanced book and it's very hard to read for many biomedical engineers. So at least take a look at the examples in Oppenheim and Willsky. And if this is too advanced for you, I suggest you also take a look at Sham series, signals and systems. This is a very hard subject. My suggestion would be to cover the basics. Make use of a curated playlist in your YouTube channel. Cover the basics. And if you feel very comfortable with the subject, get into advanced topics. Okay? Certainly cover the things that are there in the Enderle and Bronzino book. So there is a chapter in Enderle and Bronzino that covers a lot of signals and systems concepts. Certainly cover that chapter. And then I already mentioned some chapters in Alexander Circuit that are very well illustrated and useful for signals and systems. You could follow that. And, if you have done this, you could try PYQs from signals and systems. And if you really want a good grasp of the subject, my suggested reference is Oppenheim and Willsky. And pretty much most of the chapters in the book are there in the GATE syllabus. Pretty much all the examples in the book are also relevant for GATE syllabus. I have listed them down over here. If you want simpler examples, there's a book by Heiken and Van Veen. You could try that. Or if you feel comfortable with Sham series, there is also a Sham series book on signals and systems. You could try those examples. Control systems by Norman Nise has very well illustrated examples that build on top of each other. These are very useful to understand the concepts as well as to find a lot of practice problems. Norman Nise is a nice one-stop solution. I've listed down the chapters that are there in the syllabus and also the examples that are useful for kids. Notice again, this is a very well illustrated book with very nice examples that build on top of each other. So going through this book should pretty much cover almost everything in control systems, certainly those useful for QT. There are some chapters which are slightly advanced and design oriented. You can actually afford to skip them and still score a lot in control systems. In addition to this, we also have a nice curated playlist and we have a lot of GATE PYQs. Analog electronics, a very good reference is Microelectronic Circuits by Sedra and Smith. And I think the first part of the book, there are 3 parts in the book. I think the first part of the book should cover material relevant to gate. I think the first 7 to 8 chapters. And in fact, many questions that show up in gate biomedical paper are very similar to the examples discussed in the book. So this book is strongly recommended. First thing, this is a very hard subject with a lot of formulae, cases, conditions, and relations. Okay, try the curated YouTube playlists and also try previous year question papers. If you feel comfortable with the subject, I have set down the chapters that are relevant for Gate Biomedical, corresponding examples in theory table. This is one book that is used to set actual gate questions. So these examples are very, very useful. Only the first part of book is relevant for the Gate Biomedical syllabus. And many a times there are some advanced questions that show up from later chapters, chapter 7 and 8. It's a good idea to actually skip those questions and spend your time on more easier questions. But if you like the subject and if you feel comfortable with them, try this. For digital electronics, my favorite book is Morris Mano. This book has nice theory, well illustrated examples, as well as worked out exercise problems. So this book suffices for gate digital electronics. There are some topics like microprocessor architecture that is not covered in this book, and those are really obscure topics. If you're that interested, you should be able to find good references. One is Sean series Digital Principles, which covers the entire GATE syllabus with a lot of examples, worked out examples. On top of that, you also need more illustrated theory as well as examples. I suggest Digital Electronics by Morris Mano. For each chapter, the examples that are very useful, as well as the worked out exercises in the book or listed down here. On top of this, we have GATE PYQs. And we also have curated a nice list of playlists for digital electronics. For sensors, again, it's hard to suggest any one book. Just like bioinstrumentation, it would be a good idea to refer 3 books. I have listed down chapters from Enderle and Bronzino, Webster, and Carr and Brown that are specifically useful for sensors. Chapter 10 in Enderle and Bronzino, chapters 2 and 3 in Webster, and chapters 6 and 7 in Carr and Brown, has a lot of material and examples on sensors. There are a lot of previous year questions available from instrumentation papers. So if you look at those GATE books from instrumentation engineering, you can find a lot of examples. In addition to that, certain chapters in Morris and Langari, especially chapters 13, 14, 15, and 16, has a lot of useful theory on sensors. We also have very useful notes for topics like laser, strain gauges, temperature. I have also given a useful list of PYQ questions in the descriptions below. That book, Morris and Langari, is also useful for measurements. And again, this book has well illustrated examples and very good theory, so very useful for self-study. And I have listed down chapter-wise examples that are very useful for GATE. Some of the chapters in the book are also useful for statistics. So chapters 3 and 8 specifically, don't miss those chapters. And again, as we discussed, certain chapters like 13, 14, 15, and 16 are also useful for sensors. Just in case you don't like Morris and Langari, there is an alternative for that. And this is Jones and Chen. But I suggest you stick to one book, specifically Morris and Langari, because it covers material and measurements as well as in statistics and sensors. Lots of PVQs are available, and we also have curated a list of nice videos that are useful for GATE preparation. All the PYQ resources we have, book repositories, are given below in the descriptions. On top of this, we have complete solutions for GATE BM 2020 and GATE BM 2021 in this channel. And I have a lot of tips on GATE preparation as well as strategies. Towards the end of this year, I will also have mock tests available for practice. So let's just make sure that the plan we have makes sense. So roughly, if you spend about 4 hours a day, just 5 days a week, okay, you can skip the weekends. If you spend 4 hours a day for the weekdays for 8 months, that amounts to 500 hours, okay. And the suggestions I gave, there are roughly 12 subjects and 10 chapters in each subject. And in each chapter, there are close to 15 problems. Even if you have to spend 15 minutes in a given example, okay, uh, this comes down to approximately 500 hours. So spending 4 hours on weekdays for the next 8 months should suffice for gate preparation. And that would be my strategy and schedule. And on top of that, start with aptitude and engineering mathematics, then cover the basics of biomedical engineering from Enderle and Bronzino, then learn medical imaging, then try to learn 2 subjects every month so that you can finish the gate syllabus in 6 months, then you use 2 more months for revision and mock test practice. And also notice you could make use of the weekends for revision and strategizing and scheduling your gate preparation. So what I have given is a very sensible plan, and we didn't stop with suggesting names for books or saying you can find all the videos in YouTube. We have made a nice playlist of videos that are useful for gate preparation. In each book, I also listed down the worked out examples that are useful for gate preparation, and most of the resources on PYQs I have shared in the description. And final parting words, to be very smart about your preparation, don't waste your time in very advanced or very hard topics. First, look at easy topics and cover the basics. And once you cover the basics, and once you cover the subjects that are very easy for you, and then you can start looking at more advanced topics. Okay? So skip advanced topics, skip 1 or 2 hard subjects, and still you can clear the gate cutoff. In fact, it's possible to get a nice All India rank even if you skip 1 or 2 subjects in the gate syllabus. And so here is my suggested self-study guide for GATE Biomedical 2022. In fact, I suppose this will be useful for subsequent GATE Biomedical papers. And it's up to you how you make use of the upcoming